Morning all, this is Reg from microgrinder.com making yet another Search-in-the Sweat video on the 888 snap poker tables. For those of you paying attention, I am aware that I said I wasn't going to do any more of these, but I'm up at a funny hour. There's not many games running. I haven't been in touch with Will to sort out the video that I wanted to make for this week, so therefore I'm just going to run with this again because I enjoy doing it. I have had some decent feedback that people are enjoying the content I'm putting out, so I'm not too concerned about making another similar type video. Although I would rather be doing something with somebody now, just to give a different spin on things and to give a sense to prospective students on what they would get from a session working with me. Obviously I can't demonstrate that in a solo session, but I would rather keep the content flowing than have a week without any content going up. Hopefully my run good in these sessions can continue. I think my previous two videos I've had some really good sessions, booked some nice wins. Hopefully that can continue here. Here I'm going to value bet on the large side. I think I can definitely get peeled by Ace-X a lot here. I don't plan on folding to a raise. Depending on his sizing, it would just be a matter of, if he does check raise, whether I call or just look to 3-bet. He called really quickly there, which is usually indicative of a weak made hand or a draw. So again, I'm going to go for a larger bet, because clearly if he has got a draw, misdraws can't call on rivers. My plan is to bomb this, again not fold, and if he calls and donks brick rivers, I will probably just call. Obviously if a 4 comes, an ace comes, a club comes, maybe a 6, and he bets big, I would probably have to make quite an irritated fold. If that board were drier, I would not have been making those bet sizes. It's just, I think there's tons of value to be had there because of the extra draws he can have. If it was, say, a Queen 7-2 rainbow board, I would have been making smaller bets because there's clearly a lot less worse hands I can call on those kind of boards than there is on uncoordinated boards. And that's kind of how I choose my bet sizing. It's the more worse hands I can call, the larger my bet is, which usually correlates with the stronger my actual hand is, too, for obvious reasons. But that is kind of how I choose how to bet. If I got kings and it's a bad board for kings, I will make a small bet. If I've got a board that's a good board for kings, I'll make a large bet. It's kind of like how many worse hands can call. The more worse hands I believe can call, the larger bet I'm likely to make. So we've got Oleg here, who is bad aggressive with 0 positional awareness. That's my read on him. So I'm just going to make quite a confident 3-bet here that I've got the best hand and I can get clear value from someone who I believe is a bad player. And that is clearly a very disappointing flop, especially when Cleverboy cold calls. When Cleverboy cold calls, I expect his range to be big aces, like ace king, ace queen, maybe ace jack suited, but less likely. and then pocket jacks, pocket nines, maybe pocket queens. But basically, I'm really not happy with this board. Betting serves no purpose. I definitely can't get value, and with the exception of pocket queens and pocket jacks from Clever Boy, I rarely get a better hand to fold. So I'm kind of just giving up on the pot at this point. But I am going to fold and watch the hand out, because I am quite interested in trying to find out what Clever Boy's cold calling range is here. And it looks like he just check folded the river. So I'm guessing he had maybe a hand like queens or jacks there that he was going to be very thin value on the turn. Oleg, who knows? I'm presuming Oleg definitely had the best hand there. Then we just move on. These pots here, when I flop top pair in a small raised pot, this guy limped, he isolated. I just called because I wanted to keep this guy in. Sometimes I would like to check raise here, and I would do that if the raiser was going to act before the call, before the weaker player, because then we get to, when we're going to check raise, we get to trap the C bet and the call from the weaker player. We don't get that here. If we go to check raise this guy here, and this guy's checked, we don't get to trap him for the big pot. So therefore I'm just going to donk for the value now that I believe I can get, and then when this guy raises on my donk bet here, I'm just going to fold. Here I have a pretty easy, in my opinion, squeeze spot. And going back to the King Queen hand, if the hand is in there yet, which it isn't, so they must still be playing. I will go back and just re-emphasize the point I was making. And it appears they're taking quite a long time to play the hand out. We'll come back to that hand at the end of the video. I don't want to obsess over waiting to pop up with the replayer. I will come back to the end of the video, and if on the off chance I forget to come back to it, and you would like me to expand on the point I was making, please ask me in whatever thread it is that you see this video in, or just ask in the video comments section on YouTube. But the basic premise was, because the weaker player was sandwiched in between myself and the guy who raised, it's not as good a spot to check raise, because quite often we're going to blow the weaker player out of the hand, and because I had a strong top pair, I think my hand plays better as a clear value bet against the weaker player. And then when the stronger player raised, after I think I don't take blind, somebody called, when he raised on that board, he's clearly committing himself, and against the range, he's happy to commit himself on that board. I believe my King Queen is never likely to be in really good shape. I think the best case scenario there is he has some kind of combo draw, and the worst case scenario is that he has ace king or aces or something, and I'm drawing very thin. There's a lot of faces I don't recognise here, so I'm going to struggle to give accurate read reasons why I'm making certain plays, but it does give me the opportunity to discuss population reads and how I use them in the event that I'm unsure of how a villain plays. For example, now, just based on what I've seen just a minute ago, this guy open limped the button with pocket threes. Now he's raising under the gun. So, just based on those two pieces of information, I expect him to have a very strong hand here. Two very high cards or a large pair, because he's shown a propensity to limp in late position with implied odds hands. So there's no reason to think why he would be raising with weak hands under the gun when he's limping them on the button. Here, again, I know nothing about this player. I think I have an opportunity to, I should have raised the ace-10 there, I was too busy talking about this end. If this little man had a bigger stack, I would possibly 3-bet here, just like as a bluff, but with a strong hand. But because I don't particularly want to call if he cold format jams on me, I think he plays better as a call, because then he's more likely to come along and he's more likely to be a weak player due to his stack size, and apologies to Canadians, but to his location too. He donks our pot, this guy just calls. This is a thin value raise, but I'm going to make it because there's lots of cards that can kill my action or kill my hand for the times I do have the best hand. So I'm going to raise, happily stacking off against light Mert, and kind of just hoping that Yu Deng doesn't do anything crazy. I think this is just a really quite simple call. Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of set mining in modern games against regulars, because I believe regulars are good enough at not paying off these days. I don't think people just necessarily stack off now for 100 blinds with no overpair like they did maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So I think the value of flopping a set in a heads-up pot is going down somewhat, but because of these two guys, this guy we know is a bad player. This guy I don't know him at all. Because I have the chance to play a pot with players who I don't know, who I know are weak. I think the value of flopping the set definitely goes back up a little bit. When he checks his dry board, I'm just going to bet really, really small to maybe either try and induce some spew. I'm going to call here to induce some spew with the smaller bets, or maybe just get some calls from ace king and then hopefully he spikes a turn. I don't want to just check back here. That's too weak a play. For bomb it, I think I'm going to get a lot of folds because I don't think the guy has very much when he checks his dry board. So the reason for the small bet is just to encourage him to come along with a hand like ace king, ace queen that was kind of giving up, and then just totally spike on the turn. I'm not at all scared by the 6. The thing the 6 does, it makes it much harder for me to get value. I don't see how the guy has a 5 in his range. I guess he could sometimes have 10-9, but he's going to seem at that a decent amount. So now I'm going to check back, just because I don't think there's any chance of me getting caught by a worse hand, and I would don't mind inducing some bets from on the river that are now just going to take a stab because they feel I can't call on that board. He doesn't do a good job of repping a 5 if he does make a bet now. I guess the only 5 we can have is like some ace-5 suited to get some pocket 5s. For the sake of a really weak line, I just don't think he's got anything whatsoever. So I'm just going to make a really small bet. Hope he either gets curious, or I can just have a little bit of fun of making somebody fold the river for quite a small bet, which is always fun to do because it irritates people. Nobody likes folding to small river bets. And I'll check that in a minute. I expect a lot of the time there he could have looked me up with just 2 overcards. Here I'm calling because this guy has the blue note, which tells me he's a player that I want to build a lot of pots with. Let's see if we can see what Clever Boy had there. And he actually did have a 5, which is we kind of covered that. The pocket 5 is the only 5 he could have. Had I known he had 5s and played them that way, especially on the turn, I clearly would have made a much larger river bet. But I kind of just put him on 2 high cards, which is the reason the bet's so small. If Tolkien had a larger stack here, I would squeeze for value. As it is, I think I'm just going to call and try and keep his range that little bit wider. Because my hand is in a way ahead or way behind spot here, and there aren't really many turn cards unless someone spikes a 2 outer with a pocket pair that can hurt me. I'm happy just to check back here, then maybe go for 2 streets on the turn or the river. Or look to just call 2 bets if somebody decides they want to start betting. I mean, there's clearly no value in raising here. It's just quite a trivial call. And when he checks, I think I have a value bet of around $3, and I will fold if he raises me. If he min raises me, it's going to be quite disappointing because they're usually spots where I get too curious, pay off, and lose $3 more. But I think I kind of have to bet here. I think I have the best hand way too often, and I think checking back would just be too weak, especially when I block the nut flush, which makes it much less likely I'm going to get raised. And let's see where he'll open me up with. He'll open me up with 2 9s, which from his point of view is probably a bad call. I think he's played the hand quite badly. When he bets a turn, he could, I may argue, he's doing it for thin value. When he check calls the river, especially when it's a river card that completes quite a few draws, I think his river call is highly ambitious. Here against Brittany, when he checks back, I'm kind of just going to bomb 2 bets into him, and if he's checked back an ace, well, fair play to him. I'm just going to bomb 2 bets into him because I pick up the cut shot, which clearly gives me some equity. I had no equity on the flop if it was called, or very little equity on the flop if he called the bet. At least now I have some outs. And when he just checks back and just calls the turn, his range is kind of capped to 1 pair. So I'm happy to make 2 large bets to make you fold that. Here, because there's less I can get called by, this is a point where earlier with the kings I made a large bet. With the aces I'm going to make a smaller bet because there's just so few hands I can get called by. And hopefully that's induced something. There's no reason to raise here whatsoever. If he's got a 6, we're going to stack him anyway. If he's got a flush draw, I'm more than happy to watch him hit it. And obviously I don't want him to fold any of his bluffs, if he does have any bluffs. Now I expect he's just giving up. But if he's the type of player who likes to bluff against small bet sizes, I'm going to try and encourage him to do that again. And no, he's just folded. Which is kind of what I expected when he takes that exact line of check raise, flop, check turn. The double check raise is a damn sexy move to pull off, but it's not something that we see very often. Because most people want to let the cat out of the bag with the check raise with the value hands. They tend to just keep firing. And probably with good reason, because most players are good enough to, once they get check raised, not bet their medium strength hands on the turn. Their medium strength made hands. So there's probably no reason to really go for the double check raise against your typical 30 NL regular. Unless you have a read that, or a dynamic with you and that particular player that you think they will bet a second time if you show some weakness. Here I think we have a chance to get some value. The jack isn't a great catch, it's a tiny pot. But I think we can get some value from some draws, some Queen X type hands that I maybe can't get on the river. I can obviously get value from Queen X on the river, not from his draws. And his second guy, tennis guy, now. I think he's a Chinese player. Typically, I respect the Chinese players on 888. They seem to be okay. Certainly, I don't think they're responsible for the next poker boom, from what I've seen. There don't seem to be too many spewy players around, but he could be one of the bad ones. Here, I am going to go for a very thin value isolation raise against a player who I got tagged as being bad. I think my note is I played a hand against him earlier at 50 NL, where he called, somebody opened 17x. He called, from memory, I jammed ace queen. And unfortunately, I ran into ace king, but the key note here is that Lionel overcalled with pocket fours, so I know he's a really weak player. I mean, because clearly he's called ace surrender, so now I'm just going to go for 3 streets of value against him. He overvalues hands a lot based on that one note I've got on him and some other hands I've observed. So therefore, even though I've got a king weak kicker there, against that type of player, I'm more than happy to just go for 3 streets of value, and if I get raised, probably stack off, just because of his likely propensity to overplay hands, or just not fold. Again, for the 4th video on the row, you will be noticing that I very, very rarely get out of line. And as you've seen in the previous videos, maybe not so much in this video yet, I tend not to struggle to get action with my big hands. And that's because people don't have reads on me as much. They don't have HUD stats to fall back on to bail them out of their not paying attention ways. So this is why I like playing Snap. I like playing Snap. I like the fact there's no HUDs, because you really have to pay attention. If you don't pay attention in these games and don't take good notes, you're going to end up making quite a lot of mistakes. And I have no idea what this guy's like. I have no idea about him. I've never met the guy before, so I was a no. I see bet the flop is ace high and I have a good, it's king high and I have a good shot, so I think it's a standard C bet. When he calls, I'm kind of just going to be done with the hand. Here against Jin Jin Bao, who I believe is possibly a weak player. I think we have a really good squeeze spot because he's shown he does like to limp into pots, so therefore when he raises, there's a good chance he has a much stronger hand. So I believe I can get a lot of action from worse hands. Then when this guy calls and calls again, I'm not going to overcomplicate things. I'm not going to overcomplicate poker too much. I'm just going to kind of bet large here. If I bet 6, he calls. That's going to leave me with quite an awkward pot size in the turn. So let's figure this out properly. If I bet 6, he calls. There's going to be 21 with 21 in the pot. So if I go just over 6, it'll leave me with just slightly less than a pot size shove on the turn. Then I was just figuring out if I had to try and get the money in over 2 streets or 3 streets. And I kind of had to bet $4 and go for 3 streets, or bet 6 something and go for 2 streets. This board is getting really ugly now, and had I not had the king of clubs, I think we're getting close to a check fold situation the turn on this board. But because we have the king of clubs, what I don't want to do is check and give him a free card and have him just get there on me somehow. If he calls here when I jam, I'm going to need help a lot of the time, but I have an overpair, I have the second up flush draw, and I have a gut shot. So I'm just going to jam, expect to be in trouble a lot when he calls, but have my equity bail me out enough of the time. It's just really unfortunate that he's in the habit of turning sets. His play is, until the turn obviously, which is a standard call, I don't believe his play is particularly good there at any point. But we can't run good all the time, so such is life. I'm not, as everyone who's watched previous videos, I'm not one for really making too many c-bet bluffs out of position. But on this particular board, because of my backdoor equity, and because it's an ace-queen high board, which hits my under the gun range quite hard, that is one of the exceptions to the rule that I don't typically like c-betting out of position. Just because I believe I can comfortably represent the cards that are shown on the board, and the times that I do get called, I have some equity to fall back on. Well, that's a big squeeze. There's obviously nothing I can do. I just I find it interesting when people make such big squeezes. That it would be a hand that I would go back at the end of my session to try and find it again and see if you got the showdown to see what the guy's range is for doing that. Or see, not his range, obviously we can't tell what his range is, but to try and start building a range for someone who's doing that. Because if he's doing that, it's something he's going to do frequently with similar kinds of hands. So if we can nail down the kind of hands he's doing it with, we're going to be able to exploit him very easily. This is a spot where I could consider just calling here and hoping Scuzzlad goes for a 4-bet, but I am concerned that I don't know anything about Scuzzlad, he may just call, and that there's clear value to be had now from someone who's clearly going to be a bad player. So I'm just going to take the clean value that I believe is there, rather than get a little bit tricky. And that was an interesting shove from the guy. And again, if this was my typical game, if this was a game I played, I would absolutely be going back in the hand history replay later in the session. This is what I typically do at the end of my sessions. is because there's no HUDs, I pull up the player and I will go through all the pots that are over like 20 big blinds big. I just look at them to see if there's anything unusual pops up, anything noteworthy, and this is what helps me build reads on players that other players don't have because they're too lazy, not prepared to do the work, or don't see the value in doing that kind of work. Yeah, it's time consuming, especially for a losing session. It can be hard to motivate yourself to do it, but it's putting those hard yards in that's going to take you from being a 1, 2, 3 big blind 100 winner to a 7, 8, 9 big blind 100 winner. We need to be dedicated, especially in modern games of poker. It's not enough just to turn up and play. You need to be doing plenty of work away from the table, be that watching training videos, posting hands, reviewing your own play, reviewing the play of your opponents. It needs to be done. It's not just a matter of turning up playing, this is my hourly rate of, I make $25 an hour, because we don't. Because we maybe do, for every 1 hour we play, we maybe should be doing 20 hours work, 20 minutes work away from the table. Just to ensure that when we are playing, we're best prepared for the situation. Queen 10 off is a hand typically I would not defending as long as they've gone open. However, because Lionel's opened, we're happy to play and then flop second pair and hope the pot doesn't get too big. Against Lionel here, he snap potted. I'm not prepared to fold for one bet. If I call here and I don't improve on the turn and he pots it again, unfortunately I'll have to fold because my hand just won't be strong enough to keep calling pot size bets. But I can't fold the flop. Not too bad player. Interesting that he checks back. What kind of hands do we put him on for checking back here? He's potted the flop, which I'm now inclined to think he may well have done it more as a bluff than for value, because I think he's a bad enough player that he will continue barreling an ace for value. So if I think his range is going to be more weak hands heavy, I'm just going to carry on with my bluff catch here. And yeah, I'm not in love with this. I'm really not in love. The bet check bet line from more conservative players generally is somebody who's pot controlling an ace on the turn and then potting the river when you realise it's good. But because Lionel is bad, or because I think Lionel's bad, based on the, I mean, he could have been tilting when I observed the hand, but because I think he's bad, I kind of just have to make the crying call. He expect to lose a lot, but I mean, I have to be good, what, 33% of the time, something like that. I think I'm probably going to be. And yeah, it's typical of what I'd expect to see from a lot of moderate players is exactly that line. Where they just pot control the turn, then bomb the river when they realise that they have got the best hand. It's unfortunate to have to pay off such a large bet there. And I wouldn't do that against most players. That was very much a Lionel specific line that I took there. At least we're losing a few pots this time, which will hopefully spark a bit more debate than when we're just winning pots all the time. Obviously, it's easy to be result orientated and be happy with the way we played hands, or happy with the, from viewers' point of views, happy with the way I played the hands because I won. So it's easy to think, yeah, that's fine. I think there's much more discussion to be had when we lose hands, because obviously we tend to analyse those hands more and rake over our play. So hopefully, even though I clearly don't like losing money and losing hands of poker, hopefully it will actually make for more discussion for people who have got this far into the video, or if not discussion, give you slightly more to think about. Go back and look at the hand again and think how you would have played it differently. Would you have played it differently? Whether you agreed with my reasoning, etc. Here I'm just going to bet fold, and here I'm just going to make my standard C bet with my gut shot and one overcard. Once he calls, and kind of just hope he's going to let me show down here. I hope he's going to. I mean, yeah, I could still get value from hands like pocket fives, pocket sixes, but it is a bit of a stretch. And so I'm just check folding here unless he bets really small. And I'm kind of hoping he's just going to let me have a cheap showdown. When he bets that small, I can't fold. I'm not in love with the situation. It does set him up for a jam on the river, which I can't call. And it does feel like a game milked here. But I think it would be too exploitable to just fold there to a quarter pot size bet. And again, I mean, we're getting close to 5-1 on a call here. And probably not good enough at the time. I'm expecting to have a jack here most of the time. But with being such a small bet, you're never making a huge mistake by calling these bets. When you're calling bets against people who aren't that good at putting money in the pot, you're not ever making a huge mistake. And that's why we shouldn't ever fold. Because he had an opportunity to win the pot there by making a larger turn bet or shoving the river, and he missed that opportunity. Which is why we can't fold. We get such good odds, because these players, and don't disrespect them, they're just making too many mistakes for us to consider folding it at such a good price. Here I'm just going to make a small C bet. Here I'm just going to call, because CCPRA is a solid, very solid regular. You can definitely have some weak squeeze in here. They would fold if I 4-bet. So I'm just going to call and then make a small raise in the flop and hope to induce him to just shove with worse hands. And I think I'm actually just going to click it back to him here. And I mean, I could have continued just calling there, but there's potential for the board to run out pretty ugly, which could cost me value or, again, beat me. So I'm happy just to make the small raise there. It has nuisance value. It's going to irritate him the times he has to fold. It's definitely going to get me value from a lot of his hands too. And it also sets up a really easy turn situation for us, because there's so much in the pot we can just shove the turn. Here I plan on isolating if this guy ever gets round to taking his action. If he does isolate, I would probably just give up with the hand and just fold it. The blue tag means he plays a short stack. It doesn't necessarily mean he plays a short stacker style, but he just played the short stack often, and it also indicates that he's a short stack who plays tight rather than a short stacked fish. Here I was going to see bet for something value. I'm just going to check the turn, and again, a similar line to the last hand. Call some small bets, fold to big bets, and that's a really easy fold. Now, here this would be an easy squeeze were these two not two solid regulars. So now I'm just going to call instead and look to try and pick up pots, 4 slots against what should be some quite well-defined ranges by the time it's the turn of the river. I don't expect regulars to get that much out of line with each other. There's a fish in the pot, there's more to fight over. When it's reg against reg, I don't think too many unusual things happen. People might disagree with me there, but I don't think it does. Everyone likes to think that they're a dead creative player and they love getting involved in reg wars and they're about playing other regulars. I actually don't think that happens very much. I think that's a bit of a myth. I think most of the time the regulars are just a little bit wary of each other and just looking to either make a strong hand or not lose a big pot against a fellow reg. Typically, I don't defend to 3-bets. Well, against somebody who's quite bad and has made a slightly smaller 3-bet, only 5 blinds, I think I have good enough implied odds to call here. That's not a good flop. It might look like a good flop at first glance, but if the pot starts getting big, I probably have no business staying in it. I'm not going to bet here. I'm just going to check back and try and get to a reasonably cheap showdown or make trips or 2-pair or something. I think this is just a fold here. I see bad players do this all the time. They 3-bet pre-flop, then they like to go for the check raise on the flop. Then they don't do it and they start betting turns. If the turn wasn't a heart, I think we have an easier call. Because it is a heart. If he now does have a hand, I mean, if he has it bluffing with a hand like ace king with the heart, he has a bunch of equity against me. I can't call any river bets really. It's what do I want to hit on the river. There's not much that I want to hit, so therefore, rather than just waste $2.50 now making a call, when I can't really call rivers, I'm just going to fold my hand now, and if he's bluffed me with 2 overcards or something, fair play to him. A 3-bet here because he's Russian. He's not playing a full stack, so he's more likely to be a bad aggressive fish, which was what typically these Russians are when I mean, Russians to me, they're either okay regulars or bad aggressive fish. I don't know anything about the guy, but because he's played a shortish stack, I'm going to use that read that I have in general. That he's more likely to be bad aggressive fish and just 3-bet within value and then sight call it off if he jams. Which may or may not be spew. But I didn't like the call option, and clearly the hand's way too strong to fold. 3-bet folding seemed bad, so therefore it left us with 3-bet calling as, just by process of elimination, the best of a bad lot of options. I was preparing to wind myself up for a squeeze here, had Tolkien just called. Now I think it's just going to be a side fold. I expect Tolkien to be a bad player, given no offence to Australians, given he's from Australia and not playing a full stack. Well, having said that, my hand's only ace jack off suit. I'm not too worried about folding it there. And just moving on. just to spam my services to people who have managed to get this far through the video. I am still taking on students. I've had, over the last few days, 4 new players take me up on some packages, so I don't have very much room left. But if you would like to talk to me about perhaps trying a session with me or a package of sessions, please do send me a private message or get in touch with me via the YouTube channel, and we can definitely discuss it. Time is a little bit of a premium now for me over the next few weeks because of the recent influx of work, and because I do primarily still consider myself a player rather than a coach. So therefore I do intend to still play plenty of the time. So yeah, I'm not looking to take on a big batch of students. Well, having said that, I do have room for 1 or 2 more. As long as people are just expecting to have maybe 1 session a week rather than perhaps cramming 5 sessions into a 2-week period. I currently have 7 active students. I don't really like going over 8 because it does become really quite hard to juggle my time then and satisfy everybody and give people sessions at the times they want them. But having said that, I'm not about to start turning too much work away either. So if you do, if you are thinking about booking a session, perhaps now will be a good time to try and get your request in, because if I get 1 more or 2 more in the next week to 10 days, they will probably see me through, and I probably won't be looking to take anyone else on until at least the start or the middle of March. Right, I think we're probably going to run this video for another 5 to 10 minutes. So what I'm going to try and do for this, because I'm aware it's been quite a prosaic video, there's not a lot's happened. I'm going to try and create some interesting spots to try and create some discussion. So we'll start by 3-bet bluffing here with the King 10. There could be a little bit of spewing coming for the next 5-10 minutes or so. But I'm starting to get a few reads now. Scuzzlad seems to be a bit reggish, so I expect to be stealing quite wide from the button. King 10 doesn't play well for a call. Typically I don't mind folding it, but if I'm not going to fold it, I think we have to 3-bet it. And if we're going to flop 2 pairs, then all the more reason to do it. Sizing wise, I'm going to go just under half pot here, which I would typically, if I had any bluffs like an ace, queen, ace, jack type hand here, I would sort of size I would use. Here with the queens, I'm just going to make a medium sized c-bet. It's hard to get called by too many worse hands, but there are some draws out there. People will peel pocket pairs for 1 bet, sometimes 2 bets. And I don't particularly want to check back and then have to start calling bets in games that I believe are on the more passive side. I guess this is a problem with sometimes making live sweat videos, that you're kind of at the mercy of the situations that present themselves. There hasn't been that many, well, there hasn't been as many interesting spots in this video as has been in previous videos. Obviously, I hope you still enjoy them. I hope you learn something from them, pick things up from them. But I wouldn't blame you if you haven't reached this page of the video, because it's felt like quite a boring session to play. So it's probably not been that much of an interesting video to watch. But hopefully it's given you a bit more insight into how I approach poker, how I play, how when you have a boring session, you just have a boring session. Don't go, because nothing much is happening, don't start trying to manufacture situations and like juice the action and just force the action, because generally all you'll be doing is forcing the action and giving value to players. And we all have our spells of having not much happening. It's getting through those sessions whilst keeping your game in good shape that separates the good players from the bad players. Here this could be quite interesting because we are deep and I have all sorts of draws in a 3-bet pot. So I'm going to start by betting small. Typically, like I said in the last hand, when I was value betting, it's typically a size I would use when I was bluffing too. When he calls, I kind of expect to have a lot of one pair hands and draws. So I'm actually going to go for a check raise on the turn, because I don't think he can have too many sets, for example. I mean, he can, but I don't think he calls that quickly with just sets. So I was going to go for a check raise to try and blast him off. Maybe some floats he had that had pairs if he'd floating like pocket nines, pocket tens, and then still enough to bet them. Obviously, when he checks back and we smash the river, we have a clear value bet, because I think his range now is typically going to be maybe pocket nines, pocket tens, kind of pairs under the king, and maybe some weak kings. So I'm going to make a small bet to target his pairs that are king X or worse. I don't think I could have made a large bet there, because I just don't believe he's going to be that strong. I think king queen, maybe king jack's a worse hand he's going to show up with there. And yeah, king queen. And I think my check raise turn line probably would have worked just because of the depth we were at. But fair play to him, he was smart enough to check back. Against my range there, he's not going to get too much value from betting there against my range, against me in particular. I don't really ever take a line where I see bet flops in 3-bet pots and just start check calling turns. Whether he knows that about me or not, I don't know. But I think he made a good check back there, and I think he probably has to call the river too. And here it's a little bit unfortunate, this case 3-bet me. I don't normally open Jack Queen off from middle position, but because of the presence of this guy and this guy, I think it's a hand we can open. Just unfortunately, he 3-bet, which, as you've seen in these games, is quite rare. I haven't faced too many 3-bets in these games. Generally, when I do face 3-bets, I tend to respect them, because if people aren't 3-betting very often, it stands to reason that when they do 3-bet, their ranges are going to be skewed way more towards value than they are bluffs. So therefore, if people are just generally 3-betting with value and not 3-bet bluffing very often, we don't really have much business calling 3-bets. So I'm going to play around to my blinds, and then we'll call it a day on the video. Again, apologies, it's not been super interesting in terms of the situations we've had, but hopefully you still enjoyed it for what it is, which is a little bit of free content of someone playing in the kind of games that you played. Now, I need to know, this mummy, is it? If this is the guy that got my all sorts of alarm clocks going off here because I'm doing work very soon. If mummy was the guy who 3-bet me not so long ago, I think I'm going to be less inclined to fold to him this time. It's whether I can find the hand. And it was this mummy guy. It's the second time he's 3-bet me. I'm less inclined to fold to him. Now it's just a matter of, do I want to call and then just see what's happening on some flops. I do want to 4-bet, get it in against him. And the answer to that question is, I don't really know. I think we would just call, because ace-x plays reasonably well in 3-bet pots, particularly against bad players, and against the range of that's going to get it in against my 4-bets. It doesn't do very well. Now I intend to. I mean, it's really tempting just to ship it in his face here because we have tons of equity. But I think if I'm prepared to commit by shoving, I think we have a much better just call situation and keep his range that little bit wider. If he is spazzy and bluffing, we're going to get the money in better by calling twice than we are by shoving the flop. And fortunately, we get really lucky to end the video, which is been a theme of the last 2 videos. But I have got quite lucky in larger pots. But I hope that the explanations I've given and the justifications I've given for my lines I've taken don't just make me appear to be a huge luck box. Again, that is the danger of small sample sizes. The guy had 3-bet me 3 times in this session. In the second time he 3-bet me in quick succession. And yeah, he could have just had hands both times. But we commented earlier on about how when we see Russians with half stacks and what have you, we have to assume bad aggressive until proved otherwise. I'm still undecided on what that guy is. But just going to population reads there, I think we have a situation where we can't really fold pre-flop. And then once we hit that board, clearly we can't fold, and then we got lucky. If you'd like to discuss that hand or any other, please leave a message in the forums or on the YouTube video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and now I'm off to work, so I bid you all farewell.